welcome to another 202 Creates Masterclass. I'm your host, Britt Waters. I'm ready to learn today, and I hope you are too. And we're able to do that all thanks to 202 Creates. It is an initiative of Mayor Muriel Bowser, led by the DC Office of Cable Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment. And of course, our brave, talented, relentless director, Angie M. Gates. 202 Creates, you already know what we do. We celebrate, we support, we promote, and educate the district's creatives, especially this month. If you didn't know, it is 202 Creates month. So today's gonna be super special. We get to pick the brain of Kimberly E. Douglas, the director of Ward 8's The Ark Theater and Building Bridges. Thank you for joining us, Kimberly.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today, Britt.
Oh, it is an honor. I know you're going to show us all of the keys to how to be successful in your field. Our guest today is a DC native, shout out to DC, that has more than 2 decades of experience in event production, management, program design, strategic partnerships, and arts education. She's a graduate from Duke Ellington School of the Arts and Howard University grad with a BA in music business. Kimberly joined the team of Building Bridges back in 2008. And now we all know the Ark Theater. It's recognized as a cultural staple for artists and arts organizations and the whole community east of the river. So she is a busy woman, also on the board of directors of the Woolly Mammoth Theatre Company in Washington, D.C. Kimberly, I know you're busy. How are you feeling today?
I'm really excited to be here and share my story because Black arts administrators don't always have that opportunity. And I'm, right now, especially during 202 Creates month, I'm excited to share that story.
Absolutely. Let's get into the story. Right now, you're at the Ark Theater and Building Bridges. Tell us about that and the services that they provide.
Yeah, so I will start with Building Bridges because Building Bridges is the parent company that had the vision to bring us the Ark campus, which currently is 203,000 square feet which includes 3 buildings. And so my theater and Black Box that I manage resides in phase 2, the Ark East, and phase 3, the Ark West. And a huge component of why those theaters exist is because of the deep listening that the visionaries of Chris Smith and Skip McMahon had to bring arts and culture east of the river and be a part of this campus. So really, it was a community-driven concept and execution for the design of the spaces, as well as how the spaces would be used. And so this is our response to creating equity in arts and culture for community, as well as providing a pipeline for arts workforce training for youth that want to learn how to do production.
Wow. And I know that's a lot of people that are watching today. So this is a great opportunity for them. But I'm curious, what does your workday look like?
So I'm going to be honest. The workday can vary just based on the needs. So sometimes it's focused heavily on the theater operations, and that includes rentals, that includes managing a production from start to finish. And when I say managing from start to finish, it really is having those production meetings, sitting down, talking about the concept of a show, all the way down to what the execution will look like physically on the stage and figuring out what technical components will really be needed to make that show happen. Also behind the scenes, I'm writing contracts, I'm working on policies, and especially during this pandemic time, we have to have protocols in place to make sure that audiences are safe. And so therefore, it's a lot of planning, a lot of conversations, and a lot of time at the computer, sitting and working and talking to many, many people.
What like a robust position, but like also you get to dabble in a lot of different things. Did you always see yourself in this type of role?
So interestingly enough, yes, because I had a beautiful example in my mother who I got to see be a creative entrepreneur. She had her own business, which was called Sparkle Unlimited. And it was all about teaching youth etiquette, modeling, dance, as well as public speaking. And so I got to see her embody this visionary in terms of how artists can execute productions, because I got to see her negotiate with different local businesses in terms of letting her use clothing so the kids could model, also watch her choreograph different dance numbers, and then execute the show from start to finish, negotiate a venue contract. And so I will say she is my inspiration for why I'm able to do what I do today, because if I did not have that example, I would not have known that that's something that I could do. And also, I will say my experience at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, I just wouldn't have known that the role of an arts administrator was a true career path that I could explore in my life.
Wow, you were kind of born to do this.
I think so. I mean, as a child, whose favorite game is talent show? Like, I will say this, that was my like schoolyard game. I'm like, I tried to recreate like shows that I would see on TV, like with my friends, and they would be like, okay, girl, that's enough. But for me, it was always like, okay, how can we execute a vision? How can we recreate? And it was always something I always felt driven to do, purposeful. Driven to do.
And that's so important because, we want people watching this and even younger generations to have other options that they look up to and that they aspire to be, besides the standard careers that you see pushed so much. So the fact that you've been wanting to do this, you're living your dream, right?
I am. I truly feel blessed to be living and walking in my purpose, because the arts have been a source of refuge, a source of inspiration, and a space just for healing in my life. And I think the more that youth and adults have that opportunity to experience the arts, you get to know more about who you are as a person. It really taps into your humanity and helps you to see the world differently. I'm going to share a very quick story, but when I walked through the doors of Duke Ellington, I had no idea as a teenager what I was witnessing in front of me was ballroom culture, DC ballroom culture, like in the cafeteria, because there were youth in that space who had seen the movie Paris Burning at the time. And they were just enamored and created that space to express themselves right there in the school. And now years later, we're seeing Pose, and here we are. I'm like, wow, I experienced that as a 15-year-old at a performing arts high school. It's unreal.
You grew up in the culture and the behind the scenes of everything of what it really takes. But I would imagine your business can't really thrive without a space for being creative and innovative. So how do you spark that within the organization?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about being a creative and a producer, you're constantly seeking collaboration, because that is the driver of how this work happens. And so a lot of times it's, a conversation that may start with one or two people, but then you have the brain trust of a unique group that, you can bring to the table and say, well, what do you think about this? And then other elements start to build from that. And I'll just share that even from us building a theater season, it became something that required that level of collaboration from some of our board members, community members, our theater team, even our I Can't interns to say, hey, these are the stories that we want to experience and hear and see, and that we feel bring value to the Ark Theater. And so, yes, that to me, collaboration is the driver for innovation and deeper creativity always.
Yes, putting good minds together and making a masterpiece.
Always.
When you're considering a partnership, what are the things that you look for?
So, of course, a shared value system, and goals in terms of, does this group share the goals of one, wanting to elevate the craft of theater? How are they impacting the community and audiences? Also looking at what resources that we're bringing together collectively, and then how are we deepening the impact of an experience? To give an example, one of my favorite groups, Southeast Tennis and Learning Scholars, with their Blacks in Wax collaboration, it gave us a unique opportunity to partner with this group because they are teaching theater and history, right? And part of it is about education. And then they needed that component where production was involved. And so then it became, let's bring together our technical theater interns to work with this group and help them to execute a production on our theater stage. And so for me, like even in building out that show, it was about, okay, how can we meet that group where they are in terms of their vision? And then how can we elevate it to another level? So literally we built sets, we helped with the lighting, we helped with the audio behind it, and then we helped promote the show on campus, inviting our partners. And so it was a nice coming together for a partnership. Another group who I really enjoy, C School of Washington, and of course, all of this happened pre-pandemic. And one group we were able to do some virtual work together. But C School of Washington, they have a great group of young emerging actors and actresses. And so naturally, again, a fit that they would come to our theater, produce their main show. And I want to say the last show they brought to us was Little Shop of Horrors. We got to build an incredible set, have our interns run the show from start to finish. And yeah, it was just a beautiful coming together of unique minds and an artistic experience that's for the community.
It's literally building a bridge, because I think everyone
go.
can have an idea of something they want to do, whether it be a production, whether it be a show, whether it be an initiative or reaching out to the community. But it's those little steps that are so difficult if you've never been in the space. And for you to bring, professionalism and experience to that space and kind of ease the stressful parts of it, that's really a big deal.
It's a huge deal. I mean, because of course, artists have a very specific vision about how they want to show up. And in the space of being an arts administrator, a production person, you also kind of become a therapist in a way, because, you see the artist being very vulnerable in who they are, how they're showing up. Even directors, they are pretty much pushing forth this vision, right? And so essentially my job is to listen and to help them through every single step of the process and give them the tools and resources. And sometimes that comes in the space of, okay, let's sit and have a deep meeting about what production timelines will look like in order for us to execute getting your set up, getting whatever lighting and audio done for your show. And sometimes it's really about how do we engage? How do we present your show so that we engage the audience that you desire to come experience your art? And so a lot of times it's just always being open to different perspectives and visions that come to us. But overall, I mean, I will say, I feel like sometimes I am, a mini therapist working with
and
artists.
Everybody needs that. I mean, Kimberly, I'm gonna be honest with you. Organization is not my strong point. I've bought so many of those calendar planners, my phone, I got my laptop, my iPad. I can't always get it together. Are there any resources or apps or something that you can use that we can probably apply to a low level of being creative, but sorting it in an organized way?
Yeah, I mean, so it's right now so many resources, but I will say, I mean, I'm a big fan right now of Google, of course. I mean, especially as many of us are producing content and being able to have shared folders where we, can exchange information easily, can hold, a wide range of information and content.
Oh, yes. Instead of sending helpful. 10 emails back and forth, because that is crazy.
But in terms of organization, I mean, so many digital resources like Canva can help with social media. There's Honeybook for entrepreneurs. And again, you really just have to find what's the best fit for you. I mean, there are so many resources out there. I will say, I mean, I'm kind of on the traditional side, I'm an Outlook user. I know people are like, what? People still use that? But, working within an organization is kind of our universal language to use that as well as calendar systems, in addition to those support materials like a Google file or folder or calendars to help.
Because one thing is, I'll be like, oh, I'll remember it. But the brain fries. The human body gets tired, especially when you work with something that's also your passion. So you can't really turn it off. How do you keep yourself and those around you motivated in these positions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start with the team. I mean, honestly, it's always keeping at the forefront what the vision is. Who are we looking to impact through this work? And for us, it's always about focusing on what will this mean for the Black experience in terms of arts and culture? What does this mean for community in terms of being able to access this art in our space? How do you, as a team member, want to show up for not only this team, for the organization, but also for the community? Because I let folks know, you are integral to this bigger picture, and we need every single component. Now, motivation for myself, I mean, honestly, I look to content creators that are out in the world. I mean, I'm so inspired by the work that Issa Rae is doing currently. And even some of, folks that have paved the way, like a Debbie Allen. I mean, I look to those individuals to keep me inspired about how my art is impacting someone's world. And how, yes, and I say my art because, people don't understand being an arts administrator is an art form. You are creative. Yes. You have to look at the business component as well as the artistic side and merge those things together. And sometimes that can be very complex, to your point about, yes, organization and communication and building those partnerships and collaboration that helps the work to move forward.
I like how you put that because it is so important. All those aspects are important, and taking care of yourself is important. What are your self-care tips and wellness points that you have to check off as an administrator?
Yeah. So, I mean, as an arts administrator, you definitely always feel like you're on, right? A lot of people have access to you. And like I said, sometimes you do come into that space where you're acting almost as like a therapist and mentor. I will say this, I've adopted meditation as a healing source, just in my everyday life. Also, I'm a fan of lifting weights now. I love kettlebells. Yes, kettlebells. Look, women lift weights.
Yes, we do.
It is a stress reliever. And also just taking time for walks, experiencing nature. So important, especially during this pandemic time. You have to take care of yourself and also retrain your mind to eat right. I think for me, that has changed my level of contentment in terms of finding that work-life balance, because I'll say in the arts world, sometimes you're just on the go. You're eating really bad things and you shouldn't be, or hanging out late nights and sometimes having a little, extra drinks. And
you are speaking to me. Oh my goodness.
But that's the thing. I mean, I feel like over the last 3 years, I've had to adopt a totally different lifestyle just because the intensity of my work had increased to a level that I, was not managing at one point. So I had to prioritize my own care because that's how important it is.
Kind of turn it off, because I think when you work in a creative space, you're watching TV and you're like, oh, I wonder how they set that up, or you're listening to a podcast like, oh, I wonder if we can turn this into an initiative. How do you turn it off a little bit, or you don't?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I really don't turn it off. I mean, if I get an idea, I have to write it down and I have to, think through it, especially if it's something that I think is important. Like I know recently I watched Netflix and it was all about hip hop fashion with Misa Hilton. And I had not really thought about all of the visionaries or artists that she had impacted through just her fashion. And honestly, I was like, how can I use fashion as a model to engage in storytelling? So it's like, okay, let me write this down, because you just never know where your sources for inspiration will come sometimes when you are like creating.
So when you are in your relaxed mode, still thinking, still buzzing, and celebrating your wins, because that's important too, what are the things that you look back on and you're the most proud of?
So a couple of things. In terms of my work at the Ark Theater, I will say I'm extremely proud of myself with progressing our community theater space to now offering a season. I will say the initial vision for the space was purely to be a rental space for community members and for our partners. And then over the years, the demand grew. So it was like, okay, well, let's add a jazz series. Let's add Black History Month. And so it gave me an opportunity to curate more of the programs that were coming into the space. But something said, we're still missing some of the elements where equity is not, being prioritized enough in our space. And so in our 15-year anniversary, we launched our inaugural season. And for me, being able to say we have an official season in a community theater space, it is one of my greatest triumphs in terms of being able to implement, just that level of access and continuity with our programming. Now, I will tell you, the pandemic interrupted that first season. We got 2/3 of the way through, but another triumph, we were able to convert our work for our season 2, which is still in progress, to a virtual season. And so that pushed our team to another level in terms of executing and making the art accessible through technology. And I just am really happy that I've had that opportunity to do that level of work at the Ark Theater.
I love that because you are putting it out there and people are seeing that their dreams can be a reality. Like you said, you were so lucky to have your mother be in a creative space and pave the way, but not everyone has had that. So it's so good that you have put in the work and you're out here making yourself visible to everyone who also shares those dreams.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. And I will say too that our ICANN interns, and sorry, I don't know if I've given the full name, but they're the ICANN technical theater interns.
Okay.
And they're youth between the age of 15 to 22. But this program to me has been so influential in changing how I show up as an adult and showcasing my work. And I will say, because I now have youth that have graduated out of the program that now say, Miss Kim, we have seen you in your career. Now I want to open up my own nonprofit and be an arts administrator or be an executive director. And I'm just thrilled that I've been able to have that level of impact in someone's life where they're like, no, that's something I want to do. And I know I can do it because I see you do it. It means a lot just seeing, young people out living their lives and being able to be inspired by the art and the work that they see around them every day at the Ark Theater.
And not just to me personally, but I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. It means something, not that it's just you, but it's a woman, it's a Black woman, it's a DC native. People are seeing themselves in you. And I know that hasn't been easy. Can you talk about some of the barriers you had to go through as a woman of color in leadership?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of time you do go through imposter syndrome just because sometimes you feel like you're not good enough. And the reality is you are, you're more than enough. And I think sometimes it's more so battling your internal, challenges or demons to confront and say, no, I can do this job and feel confident in that work. Because you're always going to have outside people try to define you for you. Right. And I think as a Black woman, I mean, I've experienced, yes, sexism and ageism and, and levels of discrimination, because now as you go into these different arenas where you're in I'll say definitely a different tax bracket and you're talking to people that have resources that sometimes are, unimaginable, you go into a space where you're like, okay, I'm a Black presenting woman, and how do I show up and face this and show up in a way where I'm still being authentic to me and also showing up so people can understand, like, I'm focused on the end goal, which is presenting the best that I have to offer in this artistic space, as well as to make sure that I'm creating a pipeline for other people to come in behind me or along with me in this process.
That's a lot of pressure, but you're handling it very smoothly. And that's the clip right there that people need to replay this video when you're doing those morning meditations. So it's so important to keep that confidence, especially in the work that you do. I know there's got to be a time that you can share where you had to take a risk that you didn't know would pan out the easiest, but you came out on the right side. Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So again, speaking to creativity and taking risks, mounting this season, our inaugural season was a huge risk because, it's just, are people going to want to consume this art? Are people going to understand it? And I will say the collaboration with Woolly Mammoth Theatre Company, who actually approached me about bringing a project that would tour locally through DC during a time when, I'll say this, we were on the cusp of battling two pandemics that, for some, they did not really know was a thing, right? And here's where the bravery comes in. The artistic director, Maria Manuela Goyanes, said, I have this production. It's called What to Send Up When It Goes Down. It's a beautiful play pageant ritual that highlights how Black trauma has been experienced through racialized police violence. And for me, we have never presented a show of this caliber on our stages because it's not a Black joyful story, right? It's a story about trauma and it's a story about healing. And I said, well, I'm gonna stand behind this because it's important. And the reactions were interesting. You know, I had so many of my peers and colleagues come back to me and say, Kimberly, thank you for being so brave. Thank you for sharing this powerful story. I got to see myself in this story. Some of the kids we invited from C School of Washington were like, this is the best show we've ever seen. We didn't know we could feel this way in theater. And I also I didn't like how I felt. I felt that this production should have educated us more about what we were going to see. And the reality in art, you go into the art, nobody preps you about what you're going to see. You just experience it, because that's what life is. You experience it, right? And because the content was very intense, the playwright, Alicia Harris, man, her words, so impactful. I mean, she touches on so many things that happen in the Black community, from discrimination and microaggressions in the workplace against Black women to historical context in terms of navigating that, the plantation mindset, you know, the impact of colorism, all of these different elements that are infused within this story that also ends with the tragedy of another life lost due to police violence. And I was terrified to show this production. And this is me being very vulnerable, because again, it wasn't a Black joyful story, but there was joy in the end, in that this collaboration allowed our interns to tour locally with this production. So they got to tour to Howard University, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, Ark Theater, and then to Woolly Mammoth to produce this show. We got to bring in partners on the Ark's campus. So the David Lynch Foundation was able to provide meditation services and do engagement. The Phillips Collection offered their space and offered a space for meeting and hosting meals. And DC Central Kitchen catered so that we had food available to anybody that wanted to come to this show. So I will tell
everybody
you that,
won.
Man, it was such a feat just bringing all of these elements together. But when I tell you, it was extremely risky, but something that I thought was important and that I had to be vulnerable in executing.
Absolutely. And you have to meet people where they're at. Sometimes there's ways that you can't communicate things. Not everyone's going to read an article. Not everyone wants to sit down and listen to a podcast. But when you put it into art and it makes it easier to consume, that makes the message that much deeper. So I appreciate that. And you got so many wins from it. I'm curious as to what other topics could be more reflected in the creative space that maybe aren't as prevalent.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would love to hear more stories from the LGBTQ community. And just because those are stories that have not been elevated, and just really more stories from people of color that want to share about their lived experience. I think that's extremely valuable to everyone to learn. And even youth culture today, like, unfortunately, a lot of my information comes from TikTok, which is like, why
is it unfortunate? I love TikTok.
Well, I'll just say this. Sometimes, like when I'm talking to the youth, they're like, Miss Kip, why are you on TikTok? Like, for real. But I will say this, I learned so much about who they are and who they are as consumers, and just overall, like how they're using this content creation tool to educate one another and to share fashion and art and culture. It's really tremendous. So I'm very impressed by that.
Yes. I mean, if the next generation's on TikTok, we can meet them there, because I have so much fun there.
Definitely, I'm working on it.
Yeah. What is the advice that you have for the next generation of creatives and the people that maybe aren't quite internship age just yet?
Yeah, I will say be open to exploring things that you like. I mean, try things, once, twice, stick with it. And then if you realize it's not a fit for you, you can move on to something else. I think people sometimes feel like they have to follow a certain path. And when I say that, like, of course, everybody's like seeking out American dream and, go this route. But honestly, you have to find what it speaks to you and what gives you inspiration on a daily basis. So if it's painting on the street, being a muralist, or, making sure you're creating beats, or watching dancers and creating your own choreography, or even video and film. Like if you're using that as a tool on your phone to create, you are an artist that should be lifted up. And I'll say my other thing I need to tell people is, don't be that person that is like telling somebody, no, you can't. Because I'll just say this, sometimes you do need those people, but at the same time, like, you have to realize like everybody has their own path. And sometimes you will get people to say, well, that doesn't make sense because the world is like this. Like literally I had a friend say, oh, you shouldn't go to Howard University. That doesn't reflect the real world. Huh?
What world were they living in?
But that's what I'm saying. Just the fact that they thought that they were imparting something of value to me, but ultimately it was my choice and I had to make that choice. But sometimes, you know, you do need somebody to say, well, you don't have to listen to that. You can make your own way, and it's fine to stand in who you are and be who you are.
I love that, because when I look back and I think of how many times I tried to plan out my life and it ended up better, and I'm glad the plans didn't work. So you sharing that is super powerful of a message. And you talked about, yes, there's always going to be naysayers, but who are those people that are in your immediate tribe who keep you pushing?
Man, so it's so many amazing peers here in DC and Maryland, Virginia that are doing incredible work. I mean, honestly, seeing someone like Kiana Jones at the Congress Heights Arts and Culture Center, and Anika Hobbs at Nubian Human, you know, they're incredible entrepreneurs and artists. And my friend, and I'll say big sis, Kat Little Soso Productions, Kat Okadaye. I mean, I've been seeing her produce events in DC for years. And honestly, I feel so blessed to even have her as a mentor and somebody who I can uplift as well, because her vision, keeps me inspired. And, another friend of mine in the theater world, I know it's like, where are the men? But Miriam Foy, she does playback theater and she's an educator, and, she's just really incredible. But no, I do. And I also do have men that have inspired me as well, and also uplifted me. I'll say Munch Joseph, and I'm missing a ton of people, but there's so many creatives out here that are like doing some exceptional work. I mean, I just honestly look to them and feel inspired by how they see the world a lot of times. So I just keep pushing. Oh yeah, look at my. Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, look, I'm missing a good dear friend of mine, Russell Taylor, who has been so helpful and amazing. Actually, I started out doing background singing with him many years ago. Yeah, so I mean,
you gonna give us a tune?
Oh, girl. Look, I need sufficient, warm-ups and all of that. But no, I started background vocals with him many years ago when I graduated out of Howard. And then we became business partners, and, just really seeing him navigate the music business world kept me very inspired about how I can have impact. So I'll say kudos to him. Sorry, I want to bring some men into the fold I work with, because yeah.
Absolutely. I can only imagine what your conversations are with all these people and what types of ideas and creative things are just flowing in that. I want to be a fly on the wall for sure.
It's always fun times. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of beautiful people that are out here creating art. And honestly, they want to be respected. They want to be paid properly. They want to feel that their art is valued. And I think that's one of the joys I have, is that I can celebrate, the work that they do, as well as have that support in return, because that's something that's very important to me, especially at this stage of my journey, let's have that level of reciprocity in terms of how we show up for one another. So that's very important.
Yes, I think even after this conversation, I'm going to see things totally differently. I mean, you go to a Beyonce concert and you're like, wow, Beyonce's really good. Her band's really good. Her dancers are really good. But then you get to that point where you're like, wow, the people who did the lighting is really good. The people that organize how people are sitting to all have a good view are really good. The people that are Kimberly are really good. So if people are watching things like that and they do want to be more involved in all of those aspects, what would you say would be their first step?
I would say definitely seek out any event space or performance venue where sometimes you might have to start as a volunteer. and work your way through. But also networking is so important. I would say starting out, got a lot of gigs just from saying, hey, I want to work here. Like, what do I need to do? And then someone will say, okay, well, you should meet this person. And then, you know, kind of the I guess the mill would go and people would be like, okay, well, she's somebody that's reliable. She's focused. Let's bring her back. And that's the thing. You also have to make sure you build your reputation. I can't say enough how much showing up on time, being accountable for your work, being authentic is so important to people building a level of trust with you that, you know, you just can't, that's your calling card. And I'll say over the years, opportunities have come my way because people know if I call on Kimberly, she is going to show up. She's going to be professional. She's going to care about what she's doing. It's not, yes, a check is great. And at this stage of my career, look, I got to put this out there. Paying me is great. I always want to be paid for my time. But I will say when I was first starting out, and mind you, this was back in the early 2000s, it was about truly just stepping into the space and making a relationship with an individual. Because ultimately, those are people who I still call on today. That if I need anything, even with my interns, I'm like, hey, can you help me out? And they're like, Kim, I got you. No problem. Mm-hmm. And making sure I give back to them too, because their time and of course the brain trust and creativity that is them is valuable always.
Yes, you're saying stay ready, so you ain't have to get ready.
There you go. Basically. You said it. There you go. You wrapped it up real good.
So how can artists, creatives, influencers, anyone just watching this pour into you and everything that you're doing?
The most I could say is, look, support the Ark Theater and our ICANN technical theater interns, as well as, you know, if you would like me to come and do a speaking engagement and to educate your youth or even adults and to apply, some creative opportunities to come and network with people, I'm happy to facilitate that. Like that's something that is core to me and something I love to do. But ultimately, like if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the Ark Theater page, or on IG, you can follow us, as well as the technical theater interns. We're really producing some great content and highlighting artists that we feel are incredible, doing great work in the community and want to keep seeing that grow. And yeah, I think mostly just keep showing up for DC, like keep showing and sharing your art. Because I feel like being a kid that grew up in DC and experiencing so much art, I want to see more. I always want more. So I would say to those creatives and entrepreneurs, you know, keep doing what you're doing and keep the faith. I know this pandemic time has been very challenging, but we still need you and you have value. So that's something that'll always be important for artists to share.
Absolutely. And your experience as a DC native is so important because people always say, oh, to make your dreams come true, go to New York, go to LA. But we have the history here when it comes to art, when it comes to culture. Where do you see the future of that space in DC when it comes to looking at us? Is it not just a political town? Talk about where it's going culturally.
Man, so, I mean, definitely DC, yes, has always been a political town, but has always been so rich with the artistic excellence that has been elevated in the space. I mean, I love what's happening. I mean, in the H Street area and down on the wharf. I mean, I think in all of these different corridors, as well as in Southeast, you see this vibrancy of people celebrating their arts. And so I think, yeah, I just would encourage more of the schools that have impact to continue to share how not only the arts can educate, but how this is going to help in the long term. Because the thing is, if we don't keep the ecosystem going with more kids seeing art and also experiencing how it can impact potential careers, you know, it'll be an art form that starts to go away slowly. But I feel that, yeah, when schools start getting back and people, even if it's online, consume in a way that's, I'll say that helps to move it forward, this movement forward, it can really help us to preserve the work and artistry of DC. Like, honestly, even what's happening with the go-go music, go-go movement being the music of DC, that for me is like next level in terms of keeping the art, the culture going, because it's so important to who we are, right? And it helps people understand, like, no, this is DC. Like, DC is the music, DC is the dance, DC is theater in every aspect of it. And I mean, I think we're like number 3 in the country in terms of theater, but it's like, if you're not a part of that, industry, you don't necessarily think, oh, it's New York, it's LA, and then DC, oh, or Chicago and then DC. Oh, interesting. So I think people do have to just stay tapped in, but the realities of it is, I think uplifting the culture in every way is going to help us to continue to preserve it.
Yes, because one thing that motivates people is knowing the history, knowing where it started and wanting to continue that legacy. But how can we also protect its authenticity? So many times when things get popularized, they get a little bit, washed out a little bit. How can we protect things that are authentic to DC, but still share them to a larger audience?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the win for me in this is just that you have those creators that are a part of the culture leading that work, right? Because then you ensure that it's not being exploited and it's not being abused. Because when somebody else has control over the vision for showing the culture, it's going to always get watered down. People are going to take out elements that they feel shouldn't. Oh no, people can't consume that. They're not ready for that. No, let the people that that understand the culture lead it in terms of showing it. And so I think that is powerful in terms of how it can go to a mainstream level and be done in a way that's respectful and something that will be valued and authentic to DC.
I love that so much, so much. I could talk to you forever, but I have to ask you, what is next? What do you see that's next for you career-wise and city-wise?
Yeah, so career-wise, I mean, right now, look, I'm a virtual content producer, right? I've been, now into my 2nd year producing our virtual gala, which honestly, I want to dive more into being a director and producer. I love doing events like this, so I get to meet amazing people like you, more talkbacks, more public speaking. I feel like the arts world needs more people telling about the lived experience of how the arts can impact your life. Because I never looked at the arts as being a privilege to work in until I was in it for a long time. And then I was like, oh, I don't see a lot of people that look like me. Oh, is this really a thing? Why is it just me sometimes in a room? And I think ultimately what I see is being able to say, I am a content creator, in addition to being a media producer. And I still hold dear being an educator. That's something that'll always be true to me. I don't know what form that looks like right now for me, but I will say I'm definitely not a traditional form like working in a classroom. But if it's, I'm educating through producing a series, a web series, I don't know, but that's something that I see myself doing in the future. So more of a level of freedom, not as much operations work, but yeah, more so standing out as doing more creative and public speaking work.
And you are manifesting it right now. Do not forget to give yourself the flowers for doing everything that you're already doing. But you never know how many people are watching this, who's watching this. If there's someone specific or a team or a business or an organization that you really is on your list of to work with, who would that be? They could be watching.
I know. Look, Netflix, I love you. I mean, honestly, I've always wanted to tell the story and visually people understand what it takes to run a theater in a Black community. So I will say Netflix is one of those that I feel like, I could do some great things. Also, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I mentioned earlier, Issa Rae, I love her. I would love that opportunity as well as, and I forgot to mention, Jada Pinkett Smith, I know she doesn't do a lot of work in this area, but her and Will Smith do have Overbrook Productions or entertainment, and they've been doing some great collaborations. I don't know if you experienced when Jay-Z and Will Smith collaborated on bringing Fela, the musical, to DC, but man, that was such an incredible experience. I mean, I'm like, I would love to see more of that. And how can we get more of that in the Broadway world and traveling down here to DC? So yeah, I think that's kind of on my bucket list in terms of people I would like to work with.
I don't know. I might have to have some talks and get some cameras to follow you around, because that's what I want to see. I want to see how the ins and outs of all of this works. You need your reality show, your documentary series, because I'm curious. I know it takes a lot.
It takes a lot, but I'm gonna be honest, like you probably will see me like frantically at a computer, some of those fun production meetings, seeing the kids, honestly, those are the most entertaining times. Like,
oh, wow.
We're in the process of producing our virtual gala. And honestly, it's those setup periods where we're having like sometimes these really intense conversations and everybody's like, whoa, where did that come from? And then it's like, okay, everybody stand by. Let's get ready to go. So I don't know how exciting it will be, because I call myself an outgoing introvert. Like there are moments where I'm like very out and fun and in your face. And then there are times where I'm like, I need to be alone.
Oh, yeah.
I need to be by myself. So yeah, if you all catch me in those exciting moments, I'm sure you will like catch some fun things, but it's mostly, honestly, I get to engage with really, really amazing people. And that's what really drives me in terms of doing the work.
Well, right now we'll watch what we can and consume what we can. Tell everyone where they can pull out their laptops and computers and phones right now to follow and engage with you.
Yes, so you all can follow the Ark Theater as well as the I Can at the Ark on IG, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channels. And I'll say this, look, this is my task that I need to complete. I need to finish building my website, but I am on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to follow me on LinkedIn, you can follow me under Kimberly E. Douglas. But this has truly been an incredible experience, Britt. So I really thank you.
Thank you. You are a DC gem. You are a national gem. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kimberly, so much. And to our audience, I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did. I want to keep up with her so much, but also keep connected with 202Creates. We produce entrepreneurship programming and provide technical assistance, more masterclasses like this, and of course, our biannual residency program designed to aid creatives in scaling all of their endeavors. So for more information on all of that, go to 202creates.com. Comment below. Tell us the best Kimberly quote that you found, because I have a few that I'm going to go back and write down. Tag your friend, share this video, because somebody needs to hear all of the gems that she drops, and join our next 202 Creates Masterclass. I'm your host, Britt Waters, and I'll see you next time.